Welcome to Africo Tales. In the gleaming towers of Lagos, Nigeria, where Lamborghinis weave through traffic beside Danfoss and Billion-naira empires rise from the dreams of hustling entrepreneurs, two brothers would learn that blood ties can become the very chains that bind a family empire to ruin, but only after their rivalry had already painted the corporate boardrooms red with consequences that would echo through generations. The morning sun cast golden rays through the floor-to-ceiling. Windows of the penthouse office atop Kamau Towers, Lagos Island's most prestigious business complex. Chief Executive Adebayo Kamau, patriarch of the Kamau Group, a conglomerate worth over 500 Billion-naira, spanning real estate, oil, technology, and banking, lay dying in his private medical suite, surrounded by original Picassos and awards from 3 decades of business excellence. His weathered hands, once strong enough to sign deals that shaped Nigeria's economy, and wise enough to navigate the treacherous waters of both politics and commerce, now trembled as they reached for his 2 sons. Kessie, the elder by 3 years, stood tall and imposing in his custom-tailored Tom Ford suit, his athletic frame commanding respect even in the sterile hospital environment, while Django, lean and sharp-eyed, remained at the foot of the bed, wearing his signature minimalist designer attire, his intense gaze reflecting the city lights below. "My sons," Chief Kamau whispered, his voice carrying the weight of approaching eternity despite the mechanical hum of life support equipment. "I have built this empire with these hands, expanded our reach from Lagos to London, and filled our accounts with enough wealth to secure our family's future for 10 generations. But empires are not properties to be divided equally. They are living organisms that must be nurtured by one strong vision." The old patriarch's eyes, once sharp enough to spot market trends months before competitors and wise enough to navigate Nigeria's complex business landscape, now clouded with the burden of an impossible choice. "Kessie, you are my firstborn, Harvard-trained in business and strategy, groomed in the boardrooms of Wall Street and Victoria Island. Django, you possess the innovation of Silicon Valley and the wisdom to see opportunities where others see only problems. Both of you are brilliant, yet only one can inherit the chairman's position and the sacred responsibility that comes with it. Tomorrow, when the markets open, I will announce my decision to the board of directors and the business community." The grand ballroom of the Echo Hotel and Suites buzzed with anticipation as hundreds of Nigeria's business elite gathered for what would become the most talked-about succession announcement in African corporate history. CEOs of major banks, oil, company executives, government ministers, and international investors filled the opulent space, their designer clothes and expensive jewelry reflecting their status in Lagos's high society. Chief Kamau, supported by his personal physician and trusted board members, slowly made his way to the podium where a lifetime of achievements in business leadership had been celebrated. The chatter fell silent, and even the society photographers stopped their flashing as the patriarch raised his frail hand. "Distinguished guests, fellow titans of industry," he began, his voice carrying clearly across the room despite its weakness. "Today, I pass the reins of the Kamau Group to my son, Django, for he has shown not only brilliant business acumen, but the rare gift of seeing solutions where others see only obstacles." The collective gasp that rose from the assembled crowd was nothing compared to the sound that escaped from Casey's throat, a raw, primal cry of betrayal that seemed to tear through the very fabric of family bonds and business protocol. His face, normally composed and dignified in the way of Lagos's business elite, contorted with a mixture of rage and disbelief as he watched his younger brother step forward to receive the golden key that symbolized control of their family's vast empire. "This is impossible!" Kessie roared, his voice echoing off the crystal chandeliers and marble columns. "I am the eldest. I have closed deals worth hundreds of billions, negotiated with heads of state, and sacrificed everything for this company." But Chief Kamau's decision was final, sealed with the blessing of the board of directors and witnessed by every power player in Nigerian business. As Django knelt to receive the ceremonial ring of leadership and the platinum card that gave him access to the family's vast financial resources, Kessie's heart hardened like concrete in the Lagos sun, and a darkness began to grow within him that would soon consume everything his family had built over 3 decades. 3 months passed, and Django threw himself into his new role with the passion of a man who understood the sacred weight of his responsibility. He arrived at the office before sunrise in his midnight black Bentley, spending his mornings walking through the various divisions of the company, from the oil refineries in Port Harcourt to the tech startups in Yaba, listening to employees and understanding their concerns. His afternoons were spent in boardroom meetings implementing innovative strategies that surprised even the most seasoned executives. The stock price soared to record highs. New partnerships were forged with international giants like Google and Shell, and the company's valuation grew by over 200 billion naira in just 1 quarter. But success has a way of breeding resentment, and KZ watched from his corner office in the company's second tower like a caged leopard, his pride festering with each passing day as financial newspapers praised his younger brother's visionary leadership. The breaking point came during the annual shareholders' gala at the prestigious Lagos Country Club, when the entire business community gathered to celebrate another year of unprecedented growth. As tradition demanded, Django stood before the assembled moguls to deliver the keynote address, wearing his father's vintage Patek Philippe watch and speaking words of gratitude that honored 3 generations of business excellence. But when he reached the part of his speech where he was supposed to acknowledge the contributions of his family and executive team, KZ stepped forward from the crowd of Armani-clad executives, his eyes blazing with barely controlled fury. "Brother," he said, his voice cutting through the festive atmosphere like a blade, his own custom Brioni suit immaculate, despite the tension in his shoulders. "You speak of gratitude and family legacy, yet you have forgotten that this empire should have been mine by right of primogeniture. Our father established the succession plan based on traditional values to prevent exactly the kind of chaos that comes when sentiment overrides proven business principles." The crowd fell silent, Lagos's power elite sensing danger in the air, like sharks smelling blood, as the 2 brothers faced each other in the glittering ballroom, their Hermes shoes planted firmly on the marble floor that had witnessed 3 decades of family triumph. Driven by wounded pride and a growing obsession with what he believed was rightfully his, Kessie began meeting secretly with a group of discontented board members and ambitious department heads who had their own reasons for opposing Django's progressive changes. In the darkness of private dining rooms in upscale Victoria Island restaurants and exclusive members-only clubs, they whispered plans that would have horrified their patriarch, schemes to undermine Django's authority through corporate sabotage and create the kind of instability that would force the shareholders to demand a change in leadership. Kessie convinced himself that he was saving the company from his brother's inexperienced idealism, but in truth, his heart had become so poisoned with envy that he could no longer distinguish between legitimate business concerns and personal revenge. The scheme's first act of corporate sabotage was subtle but devastating. During a critical merger negotiation with a European oil giant worth 50 billion naira, several of Kessie's conspirators leaked confidential financial information to rival companies, causing the deal to collapse spectacularly. When the business newspapers reported the failed merger, whispers began to spread through Lagos's tight-knit business community like wildfire. Perhaps the old man made the wrong choice, some muttered in the exclusive bars of Ikoyi. Maybe traditional succession would have been wiser. Django, unaware of his brother's involvement, threw himself into damage control, working 18-hour days to negotiate alternative deals and restore investor confidence. But each problem he solved seemed to spawn two more, and slowly, insidiously, doubt began to creep into the minds of shareholders and board members. Kessie watched it all with satisfaction from his executive suite, convinced that his brother's inevitable failure would vindicate his claim to the chairmanship, never realizing that with each act of sabotage, he was not just destroying Django's leadership, he was destroying the very foundation of everything their family had built over 3 decades of blood, sweat, and brilliant business acumen. As the quarters turned and the mysterious problems at Kamau Group continued to multiply, the once united corporate culture began to fracture along lines of loyalty and suspicion. Those who remembered Chief Kamau's wisdom and respected his final decision stood firmly behind Django, believing that their new chairman simply needed time to navigate the complex challenges of modern Nigerian business, while others, influenced by Casey's subtle campaign of whispers and boardroom politics, began to question whether the younger brother truly had the steel backbone necessary to compete in Lagos's cutthroat business environment. The executive dining rooms, once places of collegial discussion and strategic planning, became arenas for heated debates that sometimes erupted into shouting matches between department heads who had been allies since the company's founding. The division reached its peak during the quarterly board meeting, when Casey chose to openly challenge his brother's authority in front of the entire executive committee and major shareholders. As Django prepared to present his strategic vision for the next fiscal year, his presentation slides glowing on the wall-mounted 85-inch Samsung display, Kessie stood up from his leather chair at the mahogany conference table, his Armani suit perfectly pressed, despite the tension radiating from his posture. "Fellow board members," he declared, his voice carrying the trained authority of someone born to lead multinational corporations. "For too long, we have watched our market share erode while my brother experiments with untested strategies and abandons the proven methods that built this empire. I can no longer stand silent while our shareholders lose billions and our competitors gain ground in markets we once dominated." The boardroom erupted in chaos, some executives shouting support for Kessie, while others defended Django's innovative approaches. And for the first time in the company's 30-year history, a board meeting was adjourned without reaching any resolution, as the two factions faced each other with animosity that threatened to spill into open corporate warfare. In that moment, as Django looked across the polished conference table into his brother's eyes and saw not love or even professional disagreement, but the cold calculation of a corporate raider, he finally understood the terrible truth. Their rivalry had grown beyond sibling competition into something that could destroy not just their family, but the empire their father had died believing would last forever. In the depths of that chaotic night, as the Kamau Group teetered on the brink of a corporate civil war that would have made headlines across Africa, an unexpected voice cut through the darkness like lightning, splitting the Lagos skyline. "Mama." Aduni Kamau, the brother's grandmother and the matriarch of their powerful family, emerged from her private wing of the family compound in Ikoyi, her gele head wrap elegant despite her advanced age, her steps somehow commanding more respect than any boardroom authority. Her eyes clouded with age but sharp with accumulated wisdom from watching Lagos transform from a colonial outpost to Africa's largest economy, fixed on her 2 grandsons as they stood in the marble foyer of the family mansion, still wearing their expensive suits from the disastrous board meeting, and her words carried the authority of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of entire industries. "Foolish boys," she said, her voice surprisingly strong, despite her 93 years. "You fight over an empire while you destroy it with your own hands. Your father chose Django not because he loved him more, but because he saw in him the heart of a servant leader, not a corporate dictator. And you, Kessie, he hoped would learn to serve alongside your brother, combining your strategic brilliance with his innovative vision." The old woman's words hit both brothers like physical blows, stripping away their MBA justifications and exposing the raw truth of their motivations beneath their designer armor. "There is an ancient Yoruba proverb," Mama Aduni continued, her jewelry catching the light from the crystal chandelier above, "that says, 'When two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers.' Look around you, see how your pride has trampled the very employees you claim to protect, the shareholders you swore to serve. The question now is not who deserves to lead this company, but whether either of you has the wisdom to heal what your foolishness has broken." As dawn broke over the gleaming skyline of Lagos, painting Victoria Island's skyscrapers in shades of gold and crimson that seemed to mirror the corporate blood that had nearly been spilled, a young IT analyst came running from the company's cybersecurity department with evidence that would change everything. "Mr. Django," she cried, her Jimmy Choo heels clicking rapidly across the marble lobby as she made her way toward the executive elevator where both brothers stood in tense confrontation. "The data breach, it didn't come from external hackers. I found insider trading patterns and confidential information leaks that trace back to internal accounts that require board-level access." Her innocent revelation fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of understanding through the assembled executives as people began to piece together the pattern of corporate sabotage that had plagued their company. Django's face went pale beneath his perfectly groomed appearance as the implications sank in, but it was Kessie's expression that truly told the story. Guilt, shame, and the dawning horror of a man who suddenly sees the full consequences of his actions written in quarterly reports and unemployment statistics. "Is this true, my brother?" Django asked, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying clearly in the stunned silence of the marble lobby. "Have you been the architect of our company's suffering?" Kessie opened his mouth to deny it, to fabricate another corporate explanation that might preserve what remained of his dignity, but the weight of his grandmother's stare and the innocent truth in the analyst's findings stripped away his defenses. I thought I was saving our company from your inexperience," he stammered, the words sounding hollow and pathetic even in the acoustically perfect lobby. "I thought if I could prove you weren't ready to lead, Father would see his mistake and—" But there was no finishing that sentence in a way that could justify the thousands of jobs threatened, the billions in shareholder value destroyed, the family legacy nearly ruined by one man's wounded ego. The revelation of Kessie's corporate sabotage sent shockwaves through Lagos's business community that would be felt for years to come. Employees who had supported him in good faith now felt the shame of having been manipulated into undermining their own company, while those who had remained loyal to Django struggled with feelings of anger and betrayal toward colleagues they had trusted. The carefully constructed corporate culture that had held their business empire together for 3 decades, built from threads of mutual respect, shared vision, and collective success, had been torn apart by one executive's wounded pride, and the damage went far deeper than anyone initially understood in the gleaming towers of Victoria Island. In the weeks that followed, as the full extent of the sabotage campaign became known through forensic accounting and digital investigation, the board of directors faced decisions that no group of corporate leaders should ever have to make. Kessie's actions hadn't just caused immediate financial damage, they had violated the sacred trust between leadership and shareholders, brother and brother, that formed the foundation of their entire business empire. Some called for criminal prosecution, others for immediate termination and public disgrace, but Django found himself caught between justice and mercy, between his duty as chairman and his love for the brother who had betrayed everything. The weight of leadership, which had once felt like an opportunity to innovate and grow, now pressed down on him like the Lagos humidity, as he realized that every choice he made would either begin the healing process or deepen the wounds that threatened to destroy everything their father had built, from a small trading company into one of West Africa's largest conglomerates. As the full moon cast its silver light over the sprawling metropolis of Lagos, its glow reflecting off the glass facades of countless skyscrapers, Django sat alone in his father's executive suite, surrounded by the symbols of corporate power that now felt more like chains than achievements. The golden awards for business excellence seemed to mock him with their gleaming surfaces, and the platinum-framed photos with world leaders felt cold and heavy as he struggled with the most difficult decision of his young chairmanship. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the never-sleeping city of Lagos, its millions of lights representing the livelihoods that depended on the decisions made in boardrooms like this one, and he knew that whatever choice he made in the coming days would either restore faith in corporate leadership or confirm people's worst fears about the corruption of power and privilege. The answer came to him not through McKinsey consulting reports or Harvard Business School case studies, but through the memory of his father's words. A true leader serves not his own interests, but the prosperity of all stakeholders. When morning came, Django called for an all-hands company meeting, but this time he spoke not from the elevated podium of executive authority, but from the same level as everyone else, standing in the main lobby among employees from every division and pay grade. "My colleagues," he began, his voice steady despite the trembling in his heart. "My brother's actions have wounded us all, but exile or prosecution will not heal these wounds. Only forgiveness and the hard work of rebuilding trust through transparent accountability can do that. Therefore, I propose that Casey be given the opportunity to earn redemption through service, working alongside those he has wronged to repair what his pride has broken, starting from the bottom of our corporate hierarchy and proving his commitment to our shared success." The months that followed tested every fiber of both brothers' character in ways that their elite MBA programs had never prepared them for. Casey, stripped of his executive privileges and corner office, traded his custom Armani suits for the standard business attire of junior employees working from dawn to dusk in the company's entry-level positions, his manicured hands learning what it meant to serve rather than command. He started in the mailroom, sorting correspondence and delivering packages throughout the 40-story Kamau Tower, then moved to customer service, answering complaints from clients whose trust had been shaken by the company's recent instability. The humiliation burned like acid in his throat, but gradually, as he witnessed the genuine struggles of employees trying to support their families, despite the uncertainty his actions had caused, a different kind of understanding began to grow in his heart. Django, meanwhile, faced the even more difficult task of rebuilding shareholder confidence while managing a company where every decision was scrutinized by a business community that had seen how easily corporate unity could be shattered. Every quarterly report was analyzed for signs of weakness, every strategic initiative questioned by investors, wondering whether their young chairman had the strength to prevent future betrayals. Yet slowly, painfully, the work of healing began to show results. New transparency measures were implemented that made corporate decision-making more accountable to all stakeholders. Employee satisfaction surveys revealed growing trust as workers saw executive accountability in action. Most importantly, the two brothers began to have conversations, hesitant at first, then increasingly honest, about their childhood pressures, their father's expectations, and the weight of legacy that had driven them so far apart. These discussions often took place in the company cafeteria, where Casey now ate the same meals as other employees, or during late evening walks around the Victoria Island compound, when the Lagos traffic had finally quieted enough for them to speak without shouting over the urban chaos. A full year after the revelation that had shattered their family empire and nearly destroyed one of Nigeria's most successful companies, the annual shareholders' gala returned to the Lagos Country Club, but this time the celebration carried a different meaning. As the business community gathered once again under the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Ballroom, the scars of their corporate crisis were still visible. In the cautious way, investors discussed the company's future in the reformed governance, structures that now required multiple approvals for major decisions, and in the careful way board members interacted with executives they had learned to watch more closely. Yet there was also something new in the air, something that hadn't existed before the crisis, a deeper understanding of how precious and fragile corporate trust truly was. When Django rose to address the assembled business leaders, he did not stand alone. Beside him stood Casey, no longer wearing the expensive suits of executive privilege, but dressed in the modest attire of someone who had learned the value of honest work. "Distinguished colleagues," Django began, his voice carrying a maturity that hadn't been there a year before, "we have learned together that prosperity built on deception crumbles like poorly mixed concrete, but business relationships built on truth can withstand any economic storm. My brother and I have paid a heavy price for our pride, but that price has taught us something our father tried to show us long ago, that leadership is not about being served, but about serving others." He paused, looking directly at Casey, and for the first time in years, the brothers' eyes met without anger or resentment. "Today, I ask you to witness not just my commitment to this company, but our commitment, for from this day forward, Casey will serve as my deputy chairman and partner in accountability, combining his strategic expertise with my operational vision, as our grandmother once suggested, but only after proving through service that power must always be earned, never simply inherited." The decision to restore Casey to executive leadership was not made lightly, nor was it accepted easily by everyone in the Lagos business community. Some shareholders, particularly those who had lost millions during the sabotage crisis, questioned whether justice was truly being served by allowing the architect of their troubles to return to positions of influence. Others worried that the brothers' reconciliation was merely a public relations facade that would crumble under the first sign of serious pressure, leading to even worse corporate governance failures in the future. But Django and Casey understood that redemption is not a single moment of forgiveness. It is a daily choice to prove oneself worthy of trust, a commitment that must be renewed with every business decision and every quarterly report. Over the following fiscal years, the wisdom of their partnership began to reveal itself in ways that surprised even their most supportive board members. Casey's deep knowledge of international markets and strategic planning proved invaluable when economic downturns threatened their region and trade disputes arose with major business partners. His hard-earned understanding of corporate failure, gained through his own fall from grace, helped him identify and prevent similar schemes by ambitious executives who might have otherwise escaped Django's notice. Meanwhile, Django's natural gift for innovation and his profound understanding of stakeholder management created a balance that neither brother could have achieved alone. The Kamau Group not only recovered from the crisis that had nearly destroyed it, but emerged stronger, more transparent, and more profitable than it had been even during Chief Kamau's golden years of leadership. When international business magazines and Harvard case study researchers asked about the secret of their remarkable turnaround, the brothers would smile and share their grandmother's wisdom. When two elephants learn to dance together instead, of fighting, even the grass beneath their feet grows stronger. And in business, that grass represents every employee, shareholder, and customer who depends on our success. Years passed, and the story of the two brothers who nearly destroyed their family empire but found redemption through accountability became a legend told throughout Nigeria's business schools and corporate boardrooms. Young MBAs would travel to Lagos to study under Kessie about the true cost of corporate sabotage and the difficult path of earning back trust after betraying it. Future CEOs sought mentorship from Django, who taught them that wisdom comes not from never making mistakes, but from learning to transform corporate crises into opportunities for stronger governance. The Kamau Group prospered beyond anything Chief Kamau could have imagined, becoming not just one of Africa's largest companies, but a model for ethical business practices that influenced corporate governance standards across the continent. But perhaps the most profound change was in the relationship between the brothers themselves. Where once there had been rivalry and resentment, now there was a partnership forged in the fires of corporate crisis and tempered by the hard work of rebuilding trust. They led with complementary strengths, Django's visionary thinking balanced by Casey's risk management expertise, Kessie's strategic planning enhanced by Django's stakeholder empathy. Their children grew up together in the family compound in Ikoyi, playing and learning without the shadow of inherited rivalry that had poisoned their father's youth, attending the same international schools and universities with the understanding that success meant lifting each other up rather than competing for position. And when the time came for the next generation to assume leadership roles, they did so not as competitors but as collaborators, having learned from their father's example that a company divided against itself cannot prosper, but a family united in purpose can build business empires that change the economic landscape of entire nations. As Mama Aduni grew older and her steps became slower, she took great joy in watching her grandsons work together with a harmony that honored their father's memory and fulfilled his deepest hopes for their business future. She would sit in the tea garden of the family compound, surrounded by the luxury that 3 generations of business success had provided, and smile as she watched Django and Kessie teach their children the lessons that had been learned through such painful corporate experience. The old woman knew that her time was growing short, but she also knew that the wisdom gained through crisis would live on in the boardrooms and business decisions of future generations. One evening, as the Lagos sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples visible even through the city's characteristic haze, Mama Aduni called both brothers to her private study for what they somehow knew would be her final business lesson. "My grandsons," she said, her voice still strong despite her failing body, "you have learned the hardest lesson any leader must face, that power without accountability is destruction, but accountability without forgiveness is meaningless. Your father would be proud not because you never failed, but because you learned to lift each other up when you did." She pressed a small, carved token into each of their hands, a piece of the original bronze medallion their great-grandfather had carried when he first established their family's trading business in colonial Lagos. Remember this always: leadership is not a position to be fought over, but a responsibility to be shared. The true measure of a business leader is not in how much profit he generates, but in how many other people's lives he helps to improve. With these words echoing in their hearts, the brothers knelt beside their grandmother as she closed her eyes for the final time, her face peaceful with the knowledge that her family's corporate legacy was secure in hands that had learned to work together rather than against each other. Decades later, when both brothers had grown older and their hair had turned silver with the wisdom of years, they would gather the young executives and MBA students in the Kamau Group's corporate training center, a state-of-the-art facility in the heart of Lagos's business district. The company had become a shining example throughout Africa of what could be achieved when corporate rivalry transforms into collaborative leadership and personal accountability becomes the foundation of business excellence. Entrepreneurs flew in from across the continent to study the governance principles that had turned a family business on the brink of destruction into one of the most respected companies in Africa. Young leaders, Django would say, his voice still strong despite his advanced years, speaking to rooms filled with Nigeria's brightest business minds, remember that every great company faces moments when it must choose between destruction and renewal. Your Uncle Kessie and I were fortunate to have a wise grandmother who showed us the path back to each other, but not every generation is so blessed. You must be the accountability for your own teams, and they must be the accountability for theirs. Kessie would nod and add, adjusting his reading glasses as he looked out at the eager faces of future African business leaders. The proverb says that when two elephants fight, the grass suffers, but when two business leaders learn to work together, transparently, they can create economic opportunities where countless families will find prosperity and hope. And as the young executives listened with rapt attention to the story of how their successful, profitable company had once teetered on the edge of corporate destruction, they absorbed the eternal truth that every family business, every corporate partnership, and every generation of leaders must learn anew that the greatest inheritance we can leave is not wealth or market share, but the wisdom to choose collaboration over competition, service over selfishness, and accountability over pride.